you all for joining the Oregon Statewide Youth Needs Assessment session. My name is Rachel Matthews. I am your WebEx Tech host. I'd like to draw your attention to a few technical features here in WebEx. Our session will begin shortly, but I wanted to walk you through how to connect to audio in case you're having trouble. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a few boxes that read unmute, start, share, record, and then there are 3 dots. If you click on the 3 dots, it will populate a new dialog box and it will enable you to switch your audio. If you're unable to hear over your computer, you can switch to your phone. To activate your chat box, you'll also direct your attention to the bottom of the screen, and you'll click on the small little chat bubble that appears next to the participant window. That chat box will appear on the right-hand corner of your screen. Next, I wanted to make sure that everyone is aware that our session will be recorded today. This is just another reminder of how to switch the audio if you're having trouble hearing over your computer. And finally, a reminder on how to activate your chat box. Again, if you have questions, my name is Rachel Matthews. I am listed as TA, PEA, and External Affairs in the list of participants. So if you have questions, you may direct them to me. Without further ado, I'll pass it over to Annie Bashi to get us started with our session today.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. Welcome. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for the great turnout from folks in Oregon this morning. We're really happy to be here with you all. I know that we've talked with many of you in different stakeholder groups about the work and the project, and we're going to go into a little more detail today. But first, we want to get an idea of who is on the call. So I'll turn it over to my colleague Ray to queue up how we can use this map feature here to do that.
Awesome. Thanks, Annie. Welcome in all. My name is Ray Trotta. I use they, them pronouns. I'm based in Portland, Oregon, and I'm also an Oregon native, not from Portland. So I understand that we got a cool big map here to fill in. So if you wouldn't mind, we're going to try out the annotations feature here. So at the left hand of your screen, there's a little squiggly icon. It's the second icon down. If you click that little squiggly, I'm going to do it as well. Arrows should show up. Actually, maybe I can't do it right now, but if others can, I'm not sure. Annie and others, Derek, are you guys seeing the annotation feature? For some reason, it's not highlighted for me, but there's a squiggly on the left.
Yeah, if you float your mouse over it, it's working for me.
Okay, cool. So you should be able to click it, and then once you click the squiggly, it brings up like arrows or text. And if you just want to grab the arrow and click into the county that you are representing at this moment in time as well.
I can see the feature now. Just bear with me one moment. I see what happened.
Oh, cool. Okay, Rachel got it.
No problem.
Thank you. So yeah, so we'll just be using that squiggly feature, clicking in our arrow. Once you get it, we want to see where folks are located. If also you could say hello in the chat, name, pronoun, and again, county or location would be awesome. We just want to understand kind of, again, where our mass of folks are coming in from.
All right, the feature is now working. If you hover over your screen, a long oval dialog box will appear with a squiggly line, as Ray mentioned. If you click that squiggly line, that gives you the ability to annotate, and then you'll click the second arrow that says arrow pointer. All right, folks have got it. Awesome.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. So it looks like we got Multnomah County Metro Region represented well. I see some familiar names, so hey guys. Who's our curry? We got somebody from Southern Oregon Coast, which is awesome. Welcome. Lane County, a few folks. Jackson County, awesome. That's where I'm from. Welcome in, Peggy. Good. We got Central Region, Wasco, Eastern Ontario, Malheur, welcome. And that big clump up north, I'm just going to say well represented northern TN Oregon. We're good there. Thank you for saying hello in the chat. So I got 95 participants, which is pretty awesome. So again, we just want to note here if we have any regions that aren't well populated with folks on the call, no problem there. Just gives us a little indication to reach out in those areas.
And just a quick reminder to folks, click the arrow pointer again to exit out of the function. Otherwise, it'll be indicated all throughout the presentation. So go ahead and click that arrow again and back out of the annotation.
Awesome. Thank you. Kuze, welcome. Looks like we have a lot of different folks in the chat here. I'm just reading through. I'm not going to read out all the names, but thank you. We are excited that you all are here. We'll give it just another second. But yeah, super cool. Y'all made it today. Thank you. And I'll pass it back to Annie to handle the rest.
Great. Thanks, Ray. And thank you all for hanging in there with us with our transition here to almost all virtual meetings. So it's fun to try out different technology and ways for interacting, and it's really helpful for us to know who we've got on the call today and the regions represented. And as I mentioned, this will be recorded, so folks, you can share with colleagues who maybe weren't able to join and are curious the regions represented today. And so we're going to introduce our CSH team that's going to be leading this work in Oregon. But first, I wanted to say just a little bit about CSH. So the question I get a lot when we join meetings for folks that aren't familiar with us is, what does our acronym stand for? So we are the Corporation for Supportive Housing. We're a national nonprofit organization headquartered in New York, but we have staff all around the country, including staff based in Oregon. Ray and another colleague, Heather Lyons, who some of you may know, and we're all working from home right now, which is a little bit of a twist. But even before pre-pandemic, we had a lot of folks who worked remotely, especially in the West and the Pacific Northwest. So you may know of us, and you may know some of our colleagues. And what we do, we have a number of different arenas that CSH works in, including training and technical assistance, lending. We do a lot of policy work and policy reform, and then also consulting. We're currently doing a lot of work in addition to this youth homeless needs assessment. We're also doing a lot of work here in Oregon. So you may know us. You may have heard of us. We're working with housing and community development as well quite closely right now. So let's just quickly talk about what we're going to do today together during our time, and then we will have some introductions from the CSH and the DHS team on the call. So quickly, we'll go through introductions. We'll talk a little bit about how we got here today. We'll be joined from the homeless and runaway youth offices, and we'll look at kind of how we've been leading up to this work, both nationally in the field and also in Oregon. We'll review our overall approach to the work, and also what happens today, after today. How do we begin kind of working with you all regionally in smaller teams? And we'll allow some time at the end if you have thoughts, burning questions, comments, to open it up for all of you. So I want to introduce myself. So my name is Annie Bocci, pronouns she, her, hers, and I lead a lot of our CSH work in the Western states, as well as in Colorado, where I'm based. So I physically sit in Denver, Colorado, which is important to say on calls these days because we're all joining some virtual offices with kids' artwork and other things in the background. So in addition to leading some of our work in Colorado, I've also had the honor to work across some of our youth-led initiatives and consulting work at CSH. And back when I started my career in supportive housing, my very first job in the early 2000s was as a case manager in a youth transitional housing program. So I have deep roots and heart for this work. And so I'm going to now pass it to the rest of the CSH team, starting with Ray, to do brief introductions since we'll all be working with you throughout the process.
Hey again, guys. Ray Chada, they, them, Portland. I'll keep it brief. My background is in direct service and homeless services. I see some folks on the call might be from outside in, so hey guys, thanks for teaching me what I know about how to treat youth and how inclusively and how to do this work in a person-centered way. So that's what I'm all about. That's why I'm here. Thank you for using pronouns. You know, we want to create inclusivity in our work, and you know, you're modeling that today. So awesome. And of course, happy to be at CSH. Happy to lift up tenant voice. You'll see my background right here. I'm also leading the Oregon Supportive Housing Institute right now. That's one of our bigger projects in Oregon. We're on our second cohort. And we have 8 teams from across the state who are implementing supportive housing projects. Yeah, it's a fun thing, and it's cool. We partner with OHCS, Oregon Housing Community Services, and OHA, so it's really cool when we see resources and projects pulled. So I'll pass it on to Derek or Tom.
I'll take it. Hi, everyone. My name's Tom Haskin. I'm also with CSH, the third of the 4 folks who will present and introduce ourselves right now. I use he and him pronouns, and I'm based in New York City. I've been with CSH about 5 years, and I sit on our what we call our kind of federal technical assistance or HUD technical assistance team. A lot of my work in the last 2 or 3 years has been with communities that have been awarded YHDP, the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program funds. Clackamas County was awarded in round 3 of that, and actually is a site that CSH has been providing TA to over the past year. I've worked with Washington Balance of State, Snohomish County in Washington, and a few other communities across the country. But you know, I've had some experience doing this system modeling and needs assessment process through YHDP, and I think this is a really unique opportunity for the entire state of Oregon to you know, run through this process together. Something that, you know, we've done a lot in YHDP, but doing it for an entire state, all 36 counties, and rolling that all up into one, I think is super exciting, and I'm really happy to be part of it. So thanks.
Thanks, Tom. Hey, everybody, this is Derek Wentworth, he, him pronouns. Based in Seattle, Washington. I'm also part of the HUD technical assistance team, so working a lot in the HUD program. And I've been point on the Clackamas work, so it's great to see a lot of the folks from Clackamas on the call. Just a quick snapshot on my background. I've been working in youth and young adult homelessness and family homelessness for 15 to 20 years, and have spent a lot of time just unpacking how we can better walk alongside young people experiencing homelessness. And so I'm excited to just walk through a little bit of our background together and get to know you all a little bit better as we move forward. But thanks for being on the call today. Annie, I'll pass it back to you.
Great. Thanks, Derek. So I am now going to pass it over to the state leadership, and really the reason why we're all here today and the passion that came from Matt Rasmussen leading the runaway and homeless youth work in the state, as well as Dan Hahn. And I'll just remind DHS folks that you'll have to unmute yourself going over your microphone. That's to the right of your name, as Rachel cued. And if you've joined also by phone, you'll press #6 to unmute yourself. So Matt, I will turn it over to you now to introduce who we've got.
It's like you know that I've had technical difficulties before, so thank you. It's great to see a lot of people here. Yeah. It's great to see people here on the call that I know and have known for a while, but pushing that number to now 100 participants is really fantastic for me, so thank you for taking the time out of your day to do that. I'll give a brief little background of kind of how we got here. My name is Matt Rasmussen for the people that I haven't met formally. I use he, him pronouns. I oversee the Runaway Homeless Youth Program for ODHS and self-sufficiency. In my relatively short amount of time in this role, which is about 4 years, I've been lucky enough to work with some people, many of whom are here in this call, a bunch of people across the state who possess a wealth of knowledge and commitment to programming for youth homelessness that exceeds my own. And as a result, we've seen some slow yet significant gains as it pertains to effectively tending to the unique needs of youth. And the process we are gathered for kicking off here today is no exception to that. As a little bit of background, last year, House Bill 4039 was brought forward, which was a homeless youth bill that would have essentially doubled the current budget for a single year. That budget is currently and still stands at $3.1 million per biennium. The bill had no resistance throughout the entirety of session, and it seemed to be well on its way to passing had the session not been abruptly and sadly cut short. It included increased funding for current state-funded grantees, of which there are currently 13, to expand cultural services, increase mental health supports, or add services in new geographic areas. And it would have also established a host home component, and it would have ensured that a statewide homeless youth needs assessment and modeling be conducted. This is the assessment that we're here for today, and what we're hoping to push forward over the next few months of planning. And what was really exciting about the way that the bill was phrased and this assessment in general is that it was not just an assessment in the sense of, yes, we have gaps, now go fix those gaps. That the idea behind the wording in the bill was to have an assessment that would not only determine those gaps that exist, but also provide a model that could be used to identify actual numbers of service and housing needs, as well as attaching estimated dollars amounts so that local communities in the state can be aware of what it really will take to work with youth homelessness. So although that bill didn't pass, self-sufficiency leadership agreed to commit to a variety of those features that were in that bill. We were able to provide a small increase in funding for grantees that were providing shelter, drop-in, or outreach services, as well as push forward this assessment here today. So we're really appreciative of that and really excited to get this work moving forward. I'm going to briefly pass this over to the Self-Sufficiency Director, Dan Hahn, to kind of kick off from the DHS side. So, Dan, you can take it from here.
Awesome. Hoping everybody can hear me. So I know that I took lessons from Matt on how to unmute my mic, so it's questionable whether that was actually going to happen. No, I'm Dan Hahn. I'm the director of the Self-Sufficiency Programs at the Oregon Department of Human Services. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm really excited to be here today, really stoked. Wish I could stay for the whole meeting, unfortunately. Do have something else to jump off for, but this work is so key right now to what we're trying to do with this program, with serving this population. You know, Matt came over, he says he's been in the program 4 years. We didn't get the program in self-sufficiency until 2019. We moved it over from child welfare because we felt like it was a better fit in the self-sufficiency program and with the anti-poverty work that we do in the self-sufficiency program. It took Matt about 3 minutes after he got transferred over into the self-sufficiency program to alert us that we really needed to do some more intentional focus on this program, that we really needed to do a better job serving youth who were homeless, experiencing homelessness, and we needed to really begin to address the real issues of this population. That often when we talk about homelessness, when we talk about services to homeless populations, we tend to focus on families, we tend to focus on veterans, we tend to focus on populations that are definitely deserving of our focus, but we also often lose this population in that focus and lose them in the mix. So Matt really kind of made it incredibly clear to us that we had an opportunity to have an impact on this population. We had an opportunity to really change the way we worked with this population in the state of Oregon, and specifically through the Department of Human Services, and then as we support the communities that are already doing the work without the support from the state. So can't say enough about those organizations that have stepped up, that have done amazing work around this population, but that haven't had the support from the state structure to really be able to make a statewide impact. You know, one of the big things in self-sufficiency in the Department of Human Services is being sure that people are safe and living as independently as possible. We want to be sure that youth and children are safe, well connected to their families, community, and cultural identities. And in order to accomplish that, we got to partner, and we got to really work with our stakeholders, with community partners who do the work. One of the things I loved about the bill that Matt was just talking about was this opportunity to really engage with both youth and communities to really see what it was that where the gaps were, what it was that was needed, and what's the most successful way to work with youth and with the community partners to really address the needs of homeless youth in Oregon. And when the bill, that was nice that it abruptly died, went away when the session ended, we had a walkout in the state of Oregon over another bill, and everything pretty much died on the vine for those of you from other states and other areas. And that was really a big blow to what we saw was our mission to really move the dial on how we increase and better provide services to a very, very important group of people who really need our support. So really stoked to be here today, really excited that we're kicking this off, because I think this is really the first step in a commitment by DHS, by the Office of Self-Sufficiency Programs, to really begin to listen to what's going on in our communities, be guided by CHS to really, CSH, it's great with acronyms, to really model what it is we can do to better meet the needs of this population and keep them from becoming the adult homeless population that we serve. How to get folks on track to really take advantage of some of the opportunities we have in our communities to help them overcome the barriers they face so they can have productive opportunities to progress. So, like I said, I know I've said it a lot, really excited to get the ball rolling on this. Amazed at how many people are here. I think that commitment speaks to everyone's desire to help this population to move this work forward. And I know as we get into the regional work, we'll have the same commitment for you folks. So let's get the ball rolling on this. I know that you guys have been working hard around the state. I know that you guys have been working hard with Matt. I know that you guys have been working hard with CSH. So let's just keep the ball moving. Figure out what we need to do and figure out how we're going to get it paid for. So I'm going to kick it back to Matt with that. And once again, thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan. I'll just follow up, and before I kick this off, to the real reason why people are here, to kind of learn more about this process. But I know we're really excited to be working with CSH. I witnessed their work firsthand in Clackamas County with the YHDP, their Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program grant there. Excited to bring the stuff that I saw there to a more statewide focus. I know that CSH is going to go over a variety of things today, including what the future regional planning sessions will look like, so I won't go over that. However, since I'm currently the only individual that's really working on youth homelessness through the Department of Human Services, or solely working on youth homelessness, you can feel free to reach out to me via email, phone, text, whatever. I'm available for that work. There is a program website if you have an email from me. The website is available. It's relatively new, but it's up and running. There's also a separate page on there for assessment stuff, which will eventually have some current stuff on there in regards to background and maps and call-in information. My plan is to keep that updated with information, with notes, with this recording eventually once it's posted, so that you can direct people there or rewatch this yourself for information or pass it along to people. So you can look at that there. So I'm going to be done now, and we're going to pass this along to CSH, and I think Derek will take over. But again, thank you for being here and committing yourself to this work. I truly appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Dan. We can't move forward without grounding ourselves a bit in where we are in this moment. So our world is going through a unique time. We have a pandemic that's fundamentally changing how we're working in the community. On top of that, within the United States, we're wrestling with a social justice movement long overdue and increasingly pushing us to think differently about our work. And then on top of that, in Oregon, you're dealing with environmental crises. And so we can't move forward without acknowledging the moment that we're in. And we wanted to communicate a couple of commitments to you about that. First, that we're going to move forward with we're going to continue to move forward. I can't use the word perseverance right now. Anyways, we're going to continue to move forward. At the same time, our commitment is also that we want to be flexible, right? Things might change. And so as we continue to map out, and you'll hear the steps as we dig in, about, what are each of these subsequent tasks we're going to dig into, and how do they build on each other, and how does it help us get a clear understanding of the needs and the young people in your state that are experiencing homelessness. We also know there might need to be a pause, there might need to be a pivot in that as a result of where we are in the world. And we just want to elevate that, we're gonna continue to move this forward, and we're gonna hear and we're gonna listen. And if there are moments that we need to change course as a result of where our world is, we're gonna do that. That's what we all need to be grounded in right now. All of that is wrapped in a place of grace and understanding with each other. This is fundamentally different, right? I think when we started talking about this work with Matt, all of us were very excited to come and be out with you in community and spend time having these conversations directly. And that's different now. So we're going to figure it out together, but we also just wanted to ground ourselves in the fact that, we're learning about what this means in our work and in our world. So we just wanted to elevate that. So quickly, we wanted to spend a little bit of time just setting some background on youth homelessness. For a lot of people on the call, I'm sure you could walk through this a lot more eloquently than I can. But what we wanted to do is elevate a little bit of, where has the work around youth and young adult homelessness been at a national level for the last, 46 years, really, going back to the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act that was passed in 1974, and how that's moved forward. I'm sure there are a lot of providers on this phone call, folks that have worked directly with young people that really understand what the RHY Act is and have done work within that for a while. That was our only real federal funding stream and coordinated funding stream for years and years and years. I would say in the last decade, we've really hit the fast forward button on our systems work at a federal level. A lot of that has to do with cross-system partnerships and a raising of awareness that was led by a lot of advocates on the ground. And so for everyone that's been carrying that banner for years, thank you. It's a lot of work to get to the point where we are. And there were a couple of key things that really elevated and impacted how we're going to talk about this work and what's going to be core to how we move this assessment work forward in the state. The Voices of Youth Count that was released a few years ago really was the first most recent national study on how do we capture the number of young people experiencing homelessness. It was led by Chapin Howlett of the University of Chicago, and it was really eye-opening. And I would say for when I was working with them when they were doing this national count for our representation in Puget Sound, it was really it was wonderful to see folks so grounded in academic expertise that were also going to raise the awareness across the country about this issue. That equally connected to HUD's work to figure out how to more targetedly support young people experiencing homelessness. And so out of that work grew the YHDP program, right? And so there have been 3 rounds of that funding. There have been work before that. There's going to be subsequent rounds coming out in the next year. And that is fundamentally shifting, again, how the country is looking at this issue. And so there are 3 critical things we wanted to elevate that you're going to see in this work that are a result of those learnings. One of them, and foremost in them, is an understanding that young people need to be at the table leading this work. We need to be working alongside them in an authentic and genuine way to support them and support their vision being carried out in how we address and end youth and adult homelessness. The second is that we need to have this work grounded in data. We need to understand what the data is, and we need to be able to track this. And if we don't have the data now, we need to map out the steps to get the data in place. And then finally, and this is stuff Dan and Matt both talked about, cross-departmental collaboration is critical. It's critical in every population experiencing homelessness, but I would say even more so as we start supporting young people and youth. And so when you talk about the differences between under 18 and over 18, the different systems that everyone's engaged in, we cannot end youth and young adult homelessness without cross-system support. And so we just wanted to elevate that that's our background and the foundation that a lot of this work is going to grow out of, and also just to set the stage that CSH has been working in this space for a number of years, right? And I talked about the work that we've done alongside the great people in Clackamas for YHDP work and all the other examples that we've been doing this. We're bringing all of that experience to support the state of Oregon as we move forward. So we want to set that context, and I'll pass it back to Annie.
Great. Thanks, Derek. I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate the grounding at the beginning, because we do recognize we're in a very unique and urgent moment, both nationally and in Oregon, yet we know that this work needs to keep moving forward. And so you'll have to check us maybe on striking that balance appropriately when we work with you in your regions, and we invite you to do so. But we want you to know that this work is not happening in a vacuum outside of everything else that's going on. And so, what is the thing that we're doing with you all? And so what this is really designed to do is map or model the optimal system for youth in your community, and that's going to look different if you're in a rural region of Oregon versus a metro region. And so we want to make sure that we're looking at what we say when we mean optimal system. So it's not just determining who is at risk of experiencing homelessness and what young people are currently experiencing homelessness. It's making sure we understand how they're moving in and out of your system. And we're going to do this work with you all regionally for both the under 18 system for youth and young adults, which is quite different, and the pathways for finding permanent and stable housing are going to look different for youth under 18 versus youth over 18. So we'll do a parallel process in which we look at both systems. And so it's starting with the people, the youth and young adults, informed by them, and then it's matching that with what you have in terms of stock, whether that's vouchers, housing units, host home models, there's going to be a very, very different versions of what stock looks like in your community. And so it also might look like, and actually comparing the two, right, what we need, driven from like who we've got, and then what do we currently have. And so this could look like adding more of a particular intervention at the end of the day, adding more PSH, adding a low barrier navigation center that's open all day, adding a host home model. It could also look like repurposing existing resources. So if you have an existing program that is not what we hear is needed from youth and young adults, can we look at taking those current resources and putting them into a different pathway that is more in line with what we're hearing is needed. And I'll just give you a quick example, because it's always good to kind of ground this in real examples. And Tom mentioned our work that we did in Washington State, the balance of state, and, in particular in a rural community where there was a very large tribal presence, and a lot of youth and young adults identifying as Native American were driving to this town that's actually on the border of Washington and Oregon. And they were camping and kind of living on this sovereign piece of land that was close to the town, so they could be there for work and for school and other opportunities. And the initial response before bringing the youth into the conversation was, okay, we've got this encampment of young people. We need to go out. We need to respond, kind of crisis response, figure out what their basic needs are, and how do we sort of get them out of their state of crisis and clear this encampment. And what was really happening was the youth and young adults were saying, no, this town, there's a lot of drug use here, and there's a lot of areas of town that we don't feel comfortable staying in or living in, and, but we need to be here in this community, and so we don't know how to exactly navigate that. It turned into a youth-led landlord outreach and engagement initiative, and looking at partnering for some vouchers, and the youth saying, okay, just because that apartment building in that particular area of town might be willing to take a voucher doesn't mean that that's actually where we want to be. And so it really informed kind of the response going from crisis response and clearing out an encampment to how do we infuse more of the resources that are needed and empower the youth and young adults to go have these conversations with landlords in parts of the town where they would want to live. So I just wanted to share that is an example of what we say by being youth-led in this work. And I'm also now on the arrow, taking the little arrows. So I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail in terms of, when we talk about our approach, folks are saying, well, what are you giving us? Is this a tool that we're using? Is this like an Excel spreadsheet that we're populating? Is this kind of a community organizing process? And really, it's both. We could come in here with a tool, and we could say, like, okay, give us your data, and we're going to populate our model, and we're going to spit back out to you some recommendations. But we really need to lead each region through a process of mapping out the pathways that are needed for them for permanent housing, and what needs to exist for young people in your community. In this process, we expect that this will take several weeks, several months from start to finish. We'll talk about timeline in a little more detail in just a couple minutes. But really, there's going to be a process in which we take the time to engage the right people to make sure we've got who we need at the table, at the virtual table these days, although I do hope maybe towards the end of this work we might be able to meet together, at least in smaller groups, but we'll see. And really understanding what that optimum system looks like, and it might take a few bites of the apple to make sure that we've got the right youth representation, and power sharing and decision making. So, the team that you have regionally on day one might not be the team you end up with in the end. So we're going to really help cultivate getting that cross-system representation. Going to the next slide. So, one moment. Thank you. Okay, so going to the next slide in terms of what are the key steps. There's a lot of folks that are saying, like, okay, I get it in concept, I'm there with you. What are the steps that we're going to go through along the way? Again, I'm talking about this diverse group of community stakeholders, and there is a 3-pager that many of you have seen that talks about, which we'll share the URL for that at the end of this meeting. But when we say diverse group of stakeholders, in addition to youth and young adults, we're also talking about, staff from your housing and service provider agencies, state and local government. Child welfare representation is really important. In certain communities, this might look like your representative from your school district. And it's really making sure that we're doing that engagement intentionally. Once we have our regional team, and creating a regional team is not a one-and-done conversation. It's usually inviting people in as we go. And then, again, figuring out what are the pathways that are actually needed in your region and your community. And then there's some wonky, for those of you that are data geeks like me, there's really looking at, well, what are we talking about in terms of numbers and the proportion? Like, do we think 60% of youth experiencing homelessness in our community would benefit from a host home model versus permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, other terms that we use in the field? We're going to get way down into the details with all of you and come to an annualized number of young people that we think are going to be coming through the system, and then estimate the interventions that we need across the housing spectrum. Again, we'll be doing this under 18 and over 18 because that's going to look quite different. And we're going to put some numbers to it. So what do we think that's going to cost? And, are there existing resources we can pull from? Are there resources we can repurpose? And then what's that gap that we actually need to have new resources to go towards? And so I see Rachel's already put up the poll. And so this is an opportunity to hear from all of you. We just want to kind of take a temperature check of the room. So where are you all in terms of, you can look in your box to the right of our slides here in terms of, have you done this work before? This isn't a quiz in terms of good, bad, or indifferent. This is more just kind of figuring out, is this brand new work to all of you? Is this something that you have some experience doing, or you even have some expertise doing. We'd love to hear that and just kind of get an idea. So I see the poll is open. We'll give it just about a minute here. And we can see ticking away who's participated, who hasn't. So we want to get to a critical mass here if we can. We appreciate that. All right, Rachel, you can go ahead and close it. So it looks like, can we get the little bar graph demonstrating where people fall along the spectrum?
It's in the chat box.
It's in the chat box. Sorry, I have my poll open, not my chat box. Can others see it on the team today?
If you have a poll result, direct your attention directly under the chat box feature. There should be a column that reads poll. If you click on that, you'll be able to see the results. But I'll go ahead and read them aloud. For response A, no, this will be new for us. We had 8 out of 93 to respond to that. For response B, we have done a bit of this. You had 30 of 93, which is about 32%. For yes, we are experts in engagement. You had 14, which is about 15% of your participants. And finally, for the I'm not sure, there were about 4%, and we had about 38 non-responders.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. And this will be continued, a more detailed conversation as we work with you in the region, because many of you have already started some really, so we want to build off of what you already have versus starting something new. So it's great to hear that there is some of this already happening in Oregon. Certainly we know through some of our working class events that Derek was involved in, that, you know, there's a few of y'all who are quite familiar with this. And so before we open it up to all, I want to just pass it to Tom to talk through timeline here, and we'll reorient ourselves back to the proposed regional map just for a moment.
Great. Andy, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Great. Hi again, everyone. Tom Haskin with CSH. I'm just going to, like Andy said, I'm going to talk a little bit about the timeline, but first we're going to revisit this map and the current kind of proposed regions that you saw at the beginning of the presentation and you're seeing on your screen now. So, you know, even though we're working towards a statewide roll-up or like a system model of the needs of young people across the state, you know, we recognize like anywhere, different parts of the state and different young people living within different parts of the state have different resources available to them and different needs. And, you know, the players and stakeholder groups and cross-system partners might be a little different. So we do think it's important to do this work in a kind of regional way, to break out the modeling process by regions, so there can be some, you know, regional specificity to looking at the interventions that are needed across the state. But at the same time, on the other end of the spectrum, like we're not going to do this individually for each of the 36 counties. So we're kind of like striking a balance between breaking this up a little bit and doing it in bigger chunks. So we've worked with Matt and ODHS to split up the state into these 5 proposed subregions that you see on the map. And I think the key thing here is that the modeling process will happen at the regional level. So we'll work to form kind of like stakeholder groups and teams and young people within each of these regions to work through the steps that Andy articulated earlier, and I'll talk a little bit more about in the timeline. Great. All right. So let's talk about timeline. And you know, I think that this goes back to some of what Derek was talking about earlier. You know, timeline on a screen is one thing, timeline in reality is another. We're going to be flexible. But we wanted to kind of give the general gist here of how we see this process happening in each region and what we think the timeline is as we sit now at that red arrow, you know. And I also want to note this is like the first time you're seeing some of these terms like program models or system map and pathways. Don't worry about it. We're going to dive way more deeply into this going forward. You'll get super familiar with all these terms and kind of like the vocabulary that we've put together for system modeling and needs assessments. So you'll see this a lot going forward. So we kind of broke this out. It's obviously simplified like any timeline into about 5 months. And we've talked a little bit about actually starting with the eastern and central and gorge regions. And so, you know, ideally, this is kind of running concurrently across all 5 regions, but it might not be that smooth. But we do hope to do a lot of the regional work, like especially the core modeling activities, those like kind of month 3 and 4 activities together, or at least kind of overview them together and then break out into our regions to do them. Because, like, you know, the goal is to have the statewide needs assessment or the final model by the spring of 2021, month 5, month 6, what have you. We kind of broke this timeline into 3 different portions, right? So the first couple months is more of an initial planning phase, where I think it's fair to say we've started that on this kickoff call today. We'll do kind of regional kickoffs and intros down the line in the coming weeks. But the key thing in these first couple of months is forming those regional groups, and the 3-pager that Annie alluded to earlier has more information about that, and we'll definitely work with you to create and form those groups, which will include young people with lived experience. And also this is a time to kind of like review current existing data. Months 3 and 4 are all about the kind of core modeling activities, so like you got to have the group to do the work. This is something that we're doing as a region, as a team with young people. Some of the activities include like kind of defining vision and core values around responding to and ending youth homelessness in your region, articulating standards around program models, different program and project types. You work to define a system map and articulate pathways out of homelessness for young people, which includes like, assumptions about the percent of young people needing different interventions, lengths of stay within that. And you'll use your data and homelessness data and data from other youth serving systems to kind of understand what you're working with now, but you're also, as Annie talked about, this is aimed towards, an ideal, optimal system. And you also need to kind of like make some estimates around annual inflow and needs. So that, months 3 and 4 is really where like I see the work of coming together as a group, working with CSH, other partners, to work through those exercises. And this final month, month 5, final stage is kind of like the roll up, right? So you've done all these activities to look at data, make estimates, make assumptions. Then you're going to have to work to kind of get program costs on a kind of per person, per unit, per household basis. And that will roll up to kind of make your final model. What the dollars are, what's needed given the current number of young people experiencing an at-risk for homelessness. That's a super high level. We probably have a lot of questions. We'll totally dive into this more in the coming weeks and months. But, as many of you have experience with, timelines probably don't always end up being as straightforward as they look on a screen or a piece of paper. But we hope to kind of like, get you a sense of the general direction we're headed in and the time frame on all this. And so I think we're going to go back to Annie for some next steps and for some questions.
Sure. Yeah. So what comes next? The short answer is you'll be hearing from us. So we will, CSH and Matt, our team and Matt will be reaching out to regional lead points of contact in each region, and that's where we'll, to Tom's point about timeline on a screen versus reality, we'll talk with you all about who you've got, existing for an initial team around this work and how to engage others that we know are needed. We'll talk about what makes sense for regular meeting cadence and all of that kind of brass tacks detail. And of course, this will be balanced with the current environment. So we know there are regions out there that are deeply right now in crisis response, both on COVID and on emergency response to the fires. And so we want to make sure, this is something that you all feel like you have the bandwidth to take on right now. And if we can adjust timing to make that more possible, we absolutely will do that. And then if you're wondering, if you're, one of those like A students who is wondering, can we be positioned to kind of kick off and hit the ground running? I would say, if you haven't started already, you can begin by reaching out to some of the critical partners that we've talked about and that you'll find on that 3-pager that have not yet been engaged. In particular, looking at youth and young adult leads that already exist within your region, or if we need to start building that, where can we find those points of engagement? And we are having a lot of those conversations with Matt with statewide partners right now too. And then lastly, I would just say, start to understand what existing data you have access to. I said data scan up here on the slide. That could be as easy as a Google Doc where you just throw up partners that you think that you could easily get access to their data. You want to think about child welfare for this population. It might also look like juvenile justice data, school district data, et cetera. So those are the things that you can be thinking of within the next 1 to 2 weeks. We'll be reaching out to each of your regions, and Matt's working to help us identify regional leads. So if you feel like, hey, I think I might be able to be a lead for my region, please do reach out to Matt because we want to make sure we know who folks are and where folks are.
Annie, can you give a brief just description of what would be generally expected of a regional lead?
Sure.
I've done some initial reach out and got some feedback, but I just wanted to make sure that the people on the call either know for themselves or for maybe somebody that they would have in mind of what that entails so that they could be prepared for that.
Sure. Yeah, I think that there's, the short answer is that, it can look different depending on the region and what's needed. But, typically there's almost like a project manager role in which someone would help to bring folks together, work with our team on scheduling meetings, maybe make some of the initial introductions for our team and requests for data, things like that. So it's actual on-the-ground support and kind of helping develop timeline and stick to that timeline. There's also a role of project champion that is really important that can sometimes come from local or regional leadership, especially in smaller communities. Sometimes this can be the mayor's office or other local government leads that can really say, we all need to commit to this work, this is important, and what is it going to take to make this happen? They might not be as much on the worker bee side of, kind of chasing down partners and information, but both are important, and I think both are great places to start. So if you find yourself in either one of those roles, please do reach out to Matt, and we'll get connected right away. So with that, we've got just about a few minutes, and Matt, you kicked off the question and answer. We'd love to hear from you, and I'm going to turn it over, or I'm going to ask Ray to kind of monitor and read from the chat what's popped up. If you have thoughts, ideas, burning questions, we're happy to field a couple of those as a team and talk about it more closely in our regional conversations as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Annie. So I'll just get started here. So thank you so much to Ashley Harding and Tamara Henderson for lifting up tribal youth voice. Absolutely. We have that on our radar, and we need, all of your help. So thank you so much. For those of you who didn't see the chat, please read it. It's good and thorough. And we agree, and welcome any and all pathways to collaborate and bring folks in. So that's certainly an emphasis in absolutely every region we'll be working in. Matt, I see a question here. Or maybe Matt, did you already respond? Maybe, sorry, I might have missed it. But it looks like just the method of folks of communicating. So someone said, should we send community group recommendations just to make sure they are on your radar? So Matt, will that be communicated directly with you, or do you have a different way of fielding that?
I would say that it can all come through me, and I can and anticipate being a go-between at some capacity between the variety of people at CSH doing the work and kind of the community. There will be some direct linking, obviously, but I think, yes, coming through me will be helpful, just so that we kind of have a point on all of that.
Awesome, thank you. And then, Annie, you might want to put thoughts on, do you have plans on how we will begin around the state? Which areas will we go to in which order?
Yeah, we have some loose plans just in talking with DHS and statewide partners around starting in the eastern region and the central and gorge region. I think in particular, because that's going to take a bit more time. We're anticipating it's going to take a bit more time to get the right partners engaged at the table, and there's, physical miles and miles apart between communities within the region, and so we want to make sure we spend some time really understanding that before we just dive into establishing a regional team. Also, the metro region has quite a lot going on right now between COVID response and fire response and metro bond planning around affordable housing, and so we're kind of going to start with some of the more rural regions of the state, which we're excited about. That could change. Again, we're trying to be responsive to what we hear is needed. I also did see something about regional leads, like, how is one person, especially in the bigger regions, going to manage all of it? Where there be multiple regional leads, absolutely. We can divvy it up across partners as makes sense. So that will be some of our initial information gathering conversations that we'll be reaching out to you all to schedule in the next couple of weeks.
Thanks, Annie. So yeah, we have a minute left, so we might be done with questions, but I did just want to highlight Connor McDonald from OHS. Thanks so much. Connor put his information in the chat there and said that the OHS has some fun, so definitely check that out. Always good to get on the funds. And before we close, I see the last question is from Abby. Do the geo regions match COC regions?
Matt, did you want to speak?
We tried to do our best with that. I think the one big challenge is the rural Oregon continuum of care, which encompasses 24 counties, 25 counties, something like that. So I had reached out to people at the rural Oregon continuum of care to talk about that initially when we were setting up the region, but should we try to do something that is just for the rock? And kind of the response was, generally, since the rural Oregon communities do collaborate with nearby communities in addition to their local counterparts as well, even though it was kind of more of a heavy lift on the rock side, that it would make more sense to combine it geographically than would for a rural Oregon piece. Luckily, and I say couple, at least one person on here, I know Ann with Jackson Street Youth Services is working to bring youth serving partners together as part of one of their meetings for DOC. So the work that's being done locally and regionally does, at some level, have a pipeline to get to the rural Oregon continuum of care to combine all that together. So it's not a perfect match specifically with them, but I'm pretty sure that most of the other continuums of care are matched if it would cross over.
Great, thank you. So I know that folks have to drop off. Doug Riggs, I just wanted to quickly invite you if you had something you wanted to share about the youth forum. Then we're about a minute over, so if folks can hang on just a moment, and then we'll close out. Okay, I think we've got folks that have to jump. Or Doug, are you? Yeah, yes. Okay. Thank you all for joining. There's the website up here that Matt has been working hard to set up, as well as my contact information. You all know how to reach Matt, but his contact information is here. please do reach out to us. We will share the recording, and we will be in touch. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day.